With just 20 games remaining in the MLB regular season and less than a month until the playoffs begin, the Philadelphia Phillies got the exact news that they did not want to hear. Trea Turner left today's matchup against the Miami Marlins after pulling up lame running to first base. With his hamstring issues proving so bothersome last season, it is a concern that these seem back at the forefront. I do want to reflect on exactly what we know in the situation to this point, why this is such a big deal for the Phillies, and how you can possibly attempt to replace a player who has the case for the most valuable member of this Phillies team this season. So let's jump right into things here, and do just want to start off with the what we do know at this point. We got after the game that's coming from Scott Lauber here, who tweets out, Trea Turner has a right hamstring strain. He will be evaluated further according to the Phillies. And to interject a little bit here, the play itself, what it looked like to me like Trea Turner knew what happened right away. That he ran to first, reached on what ultimately ended up being a fielder's choice there, pulled up right away, went right down to the dugout, and we did not see him again. Now, we got a couple quotes also that I did want to acknowledge here, so to continue plugging on, and did want to pull up this portion here that states, Trea Turner has a right hamstring strain. He will be evaluated further. We also know that he will get an MRI tomorrow. He felt, quote, grabbing in his hamstring, he said. Quote, if I could have kept going, I would have. Said he hopes this is more mild than the left hamstring strain that kept him out for 6 weeks last year, but the Phillies will know more after the MRI. So Rob Thomson spoke on the situation, and what he said regarding Turner was, quote, there's some concern there. Obviously, he's having a great year. He's a big part of this ball club. I want to keep people healthy, especially coming down the stretch here. We'll know more tomorrow. And Trea himself spoke on the situation, saying, quote, it's never a good time, really, but having something like this late in the season is not fun, Turner said. When these games really matter, you need to be out there. Hopefully, it's not too many games. We'll see. Now, the positive side of things, if you do want to take things, is the Phillies have mostly handled their business to this point. That if we want to take a look at the playoff outlook to this stage, that things are well under control. That the Phillies at this stage in the game are 83-60. That their chance of making the playoffs is 100% here per Fangraphs. I don't believe that is mathematically correct, but I do think it is logically correct here. But their chance of winning the division up to 96.2%. The clinch the bye 74%. So to get a wild card spot, just 3.8%, and it does give them an 11.8% chance of winning the World Series, which I do appreciate here. Not 100% sure how these numbers are overall calculated, but Fangraphs pretty respectable there. The thing that we do know to be fact here is that they have a comfortable lead above the New York Mets for the NL East. There's really no debate about them running away with this current NL East division here. What there is, what's the closer watch to this point, is to ensure that they get that bye. And with a situation like this with Trea Turner, that could prove to be increasingly important. That, yes, it will be a bummer if we do not see Trea for the remainder of the regular season. But what is the bigger storyline here is his availability for playoffs. So we already know that this team has lost their ace, a Cy Young candidate in Zack Wheeler, that he will not be returning due to his blood clot issue. It would be another massive hit if you are able, or if you are forced to continue plugging along without your shortstop. Now, to acknowledge what Trey has done to this point this season, that he's got 14 home runs, 68 RBIs, 44 walks, 178 hits across his 583 at-bats there, 36 stolen bases, that at this very stage of the game, he leads the entire National League in hits, leads the entire National League in batting average. And to give a couple more nice nuggets here, shout out to @Rojas Media for tweeting this, saying that he has a 6.6 F4, which is the second highest among shortstops, 178 hits, which leads the National League, a 305 batting average, which also leads the National League, an 812 OPS with 36 stolen bases and 16 outs above average, which is the fourth most among shortstops there. I will say his growth defensively, to me, has been really impressive and really noteworthy this year. That's been my number one critique of Trea Turner, that and the lack of power there. And I think he's answered a lot of those questions. That I think is pretty indisputable. This has been very clearly his best season in a Phillies uniform to this point. That there were lofty expectations when he signed on the dotted line for his $300 million contract to be a foundational piece of this Phillies franchise, alongside Bryce Harper, alongside Kyle Schwarber, and hopefully Schwarber sticking around in the future, which we do have an update on that. We'll be getting into in another video as well. That apparently, according to Bob Nightingale, the Phillies will not be outbid for Kyle Schwarber this summer. We're going to dive into exactly what that means in another video. But to keep it on Trea Turner right here, the Phillies are now forced to continue plugging along without him. And when I think about logistically, how do they survive this type of blow to the team? And we do not know the severity or the length to this point, but I do think they're going to be overly cautious, and I think it is probably fairly likely that we may not see him again this regular season. In an ideal world, for sure, that this is just, a mild issue, takes a couple couple days, maybe 2 weeks, and then he's back in action. We'll know more about the exact details and timeline of that when we do get the MRI tomorrow. But I did not love the immediate reaction from Trea Turner, and even watching the interview back after the fact, it felt like a bit of a somber tone that he was speaking with. This has to be more frustrating than anything for Trea specifically. But now for the Phillies, the obvious solution, Edmundo Sosa is going to be the guy. I do wonder if they try and plug Bryson Stott a little bit at shortstop, see how that works a little bit. There's also been a pretty incredible stretch of play that we're seeing from Aiden Miller in the minor leagues, both at the plate and in the field here, that this is their next shortstop prospect of the future. Seems like he could slide into a couple other areas in the infield, and I think in the long run, it would probably be the best vision to turn him into a third baseman. But I do wonder, is this the time to reward some strong play in the minor leagues and give him an opportunity? And it would be quite funny if that is how things play out. And we are not speaking about, Justin Crawford, who, by the way, suffered a concussion the other night. So hopefully all good there. I believe it was our boy Otto Kemp who trucked him in left field that ultimately ended up why he suffered it. If we see Aiden Miller get an opportunity before Justin Crawford or Andrew Painter, it would be quite hilarious, but that may be the way that things are playing out. But for the short term, I do think the Phillies do keep things in-house, at least until they have a conclusion. That Edmundo Sosa is going to be jumped into an everyday starting caliber player. He's had some really nice flashes for this Phillies team this year, and that's going to need to continue there. The other thing to keep in mind is, of course, the lineup. That Trea Turner has really found his stride, serving as the full-time leadoff hitter for this Phillies team. And there's been an interesting dance across his tenure. Of course, we dealt with the Kyle Schwarber leadoff era here in Philadelphia, and there was some great success on this team. But Trea did really solidify that spot, and I do wonder if we inch back towards the Kyle Schwarber leadoff conversation. I also wonder if maybe this is the time to mix things up, try some things. That there was some experimentation with Bryson Stott in the leadoff role. Could they go back to Schwarber being the guy? Could a dude like Harrison Bader get an opportunity at being that type of contact hitter to set the tone for this Phillies team? We'll see ultimately what shakes out for this. It would be a huge deal if Trea Turner cannot return this season. I think it is too premature to declare that at this stage of the game. It is never great to see hamstring injuries, and it's especially concerning with the track record that we saw last year and the length of time that he did miss. But for the time being, we're going to have to keep holding our breath and hoping. I'm sure the Phillies are going to get him under that MRI as soon as possible, begin to create a plan, and begin to have some answers. But it does feel like this potential World Series path, we're seeing guys begin to get picked off a little bit. That baseball is a grind. It's a 162-game marathon for a reason, and we're seeing that length of time with the overall season beginning to take a toll on quite a few of these guys' bodies. So with that said, about the strength that they have in the standings, I do think for Rob Thomson specifically, it is maybe time to begin thinking about, do we need to take our foot off the gas a little? Should I start spacing out? Bryce Harper is off today. Kyle Schwarber resting. We can rotate the key members of this team, but we'll see if Trea Turner is a part of this equation as we continue to progress. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. What is your level of panic right now? For me, it is certainly not great, that I don't feel excellent that this did happen. I'm not in my full-scale panic mode right now. That for me, it would not be the end of the world if Trea Turner cannot return this regular season. What is the distinguishing factor of if he can be back for the postseason? That's sort of where my head's at with that, but we'll see. Ultimately, we will get more information tomorrow. I'll be sure to jump right back on here on Phillies Digest to give the update once we get more from the Phillies. At this point in the game, we can only reflect on what we officially know, which we do know, of course, is the hamstring strain, is what it's being called by the Phillies directly there. So he's going to be reevaluated further. We'll see what we hear tomorrow. Not a great sign for the Phillies as a whole, but we're not going to panic and act like it's the end of the world until that information is officially presented to us. So we'll see what happens from there. Like I said, I'll be hopping right back on here with an update tomorrow as soon as the Phillies do provide it. So make sure you guys are tapped into that, and the best way by doing so is to be hitting the subscribe on the channel there. If you have not already, make sure you're dropping a like on this video, dropping a subscribe to us here on Phillies Digest, and any comments you have below. We'll be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.